That's right. Welcome in. It is the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. Thank you for tuning in. It is Wednesday, August 14th, the year of our Lord 2024. My name is Brandon Baney. Let's bring out our North Idaho resident and expert. It is Ryan Scaggs. What's up?
I saw you peeking down in the bottom right corner of your monitor.
I was looking at the date because I'm one of those guys. I could tell you what day of the week it is most of the time. I'm bad with like what actual date on the calendar we're at. So yeah, August 14th. I had to double check and make sure I was correct.
I'm glad you were able to figure it out, Brandon.
Yeah. So here we are. We are coming at you live on a Wednesday morning, just after, well, it's almost 11:30 now Pacific time. The plan is every week to do the show live on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. And you might be thinking, boy, you're 90 minutes late. You're off to a rip-roaring start here in season 4 of the North Idaho Prepcast. Well, we have a good reason for being on a little later than usual today, Ryan. We just got done with the annual IHSAA Media Days for District 1 over at Lake City High School. You and I were both there and learned some good stuff.
Yeah, we picked up some good information and picked up some stuff that obviously we knew, but I think it was kind of there's some future casting and stuff as well, and getting some transparency on changes and things that are taking place in the landscape in athletics here in the state of Idaho. And but yeah, it was great to be in the setting with members of our peers, I guess you could say. I don't want to say I'm on the same level as guys like Mark Nelke or Jason Elliott and folks like that. There's people that are, way more experienced and do way more work in high school sports than myself. But it was great to be in the room and just hear some great information about kind of where we stand with athletics going into this school year.
Yeah, and I know he's going to tune in later to watch this. So Max Oswald from the Bonner County B was not there. We missed you at the meeting, Max, but I know you're going to do great. You already are doing great stuff. Once again,
I think Jason Duca has your press pass, by the way. So.
Yeah, Jason picked that up for him. For the first time this year, Bonner County Daily B is going to vote in the media poll. That's awesome. Cool. Yeah,
that's awesome. I think it's great to get more voice up north. I mean, typically it's been, one or two guys throughout the years, but now getting some more recognition, some more voice up here and up north with things that are going on. And Max does a great job with having his ear to the ground with athletics in District 1. And looking forward to him finally having a say in how things go as far as rankings here in the state of Idaho.
Yeah, so like we said in many shows past, we're very spoiled with our media coverage up here in District 1 and 2. Specifically, the District 2 meeting is going to be a little later on this afternoon, so we're just talking specifically District 1 for the meeting we went to. But anyways, nobody cares about that. What they care about, Ryan, is the start of high school football season. Two-a-days started earlier this week. I'm planning on going to a couple of local practices, especially for the smaller schools, Coeur de Christ and Lakeside. They both have new head coaches, so I kind of wanted to go introduce myself. The practice times, man, Lakeside, I was looking at their schedule for two-a-days, 6 a.m., 6 p.m.
Well, and I mean, I'm used to that. Going back to my days in high school, the early morning practices, you kind of weed out the guys that really want to be there. But it's also, you got to think about, you start getting rural too. You got kids that are cutting wheat and stuff right now during the afternoon, so you kind of have to move and plan accordingly with the farmer kids around in the area. I know, especially down on the Camas Prairie and on the Palouse, that you got some families they got bigger business to tend to at hand than just the start of football season. So
yeah. For sure. Hey, we're starting to get some comments here on the chat. Friendly reminder, you can watch this Prepcast live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter account, X. You can also watch on replay anytime at those destinations also. You can also listen to the North Idaho Prepcast each and every week at IdahoSports.com. Now, when you look at the homepage, Ryan, all of our Prepcasts are directly to the left of our main article. So it's all right there. Easy access. Just click on the North Idaho Prepcast. It'll take you right to our page. You can also, of course, subscribe and download this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. So we've got some comments rolling in here. Sam on Twitter, Sam Buffington. Wow, I just saw you guys. Yeah, Sam was at the meeting for IHSAA Media Days. Sam, we don't stop working. We're hustling 24/7. We get done with the meeting, we come right back to our respective homes, and we come on to podcast. That's how it goes here.
That's how it goes. That's right. Yeah. Practice.
Yeah, we're talking about practice. Hey, here's Scott Burton, our Magic Valley Prepcast host, and we did our first Magic Valley Prepcast of the season on Monday night. Scott wants to know, is that Wham or Tears for Fears in the picture frame behind you?
That is a vinyl of Johnny Cash and Friends.
Okay, that doesn't look like something. I guess Johnny's on the right, huh? And a friend is on the left.
Yeah,
Interesting.
His Friends.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting album. I picked it up at a yard sale for $1, but yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, show and tell time is over now. And so let's get back to, and that's the thing. Sometimes on the North Idaho Prepcast, we get a little distracted. So, okay. The focus of this show, I wanted it to be, next week, we'll start diving into like more specific, football matchups. Hey, team A is playing team B. Let's drill down. I just wanted to, while football practices are still just taking place and we're still getting to know these teams, I wanted to tackle 5 big questions in terms of North Idaho high school football. And I think these are questions that are on fans' minds. It's not necessarily the 5 teams we're talking about today are not necessarily they're going to be good, but it's not like, oh, this is the only team worthy of conversation. We're going to talk about a lot of different teams throughout the season, but these were just the questions that were most intriguing to me, and I think are going to be pretty intriguing to fans in general. So Ryan, are you ready to answer some burning questions here for North Idaho football?
Yeah, no, let's get at it.
All right. First question. Start all the way at the top at the new 6A classification. Can Coeur d'Alene get back to the title game and finish the job? We know the Vikings, of course, last year had that monumental semifinal victory over Eagle, a previously undefeated Eagle team in the 6A semis, where they won 7-6. They get to the state championship game against Highland, a fun shootout down there at the Dome in Pocatello. Basically a home game for Highland, but those Coeur d'Alene fans really traveled well. And it came down to basically with about 5 minutes to go in the game, Highland's quarterback reeled off a long touchdown run. The Rams end up winning by 7 points. And so the question is, can Coeur d'Alene get back to the title game and finish the job this time, Ryan?
Realistically, I think absolutely. I think that they're a contender. I think there's 4 teams at 6A that you could really look at and say, like, you could point a pin on them and say, this could be realistically the semifinal teams there. They're going to have to replace Shea Robertson on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, he was generational linebacker for the Vikings. But they've got, more than an able cast around them. They return a lot of guys that, were very active on both sides of the ball. You got an experienced signal caller and Caden Simmons coming back at quarterback. You've got Kai Wheeler as a receiver / tight end around him. You've got a host of running backs and the, really good stable. I mean, the thing about Coeur d'Alene people don't really realize was like their JV team was pretty lights out last year too. So it's not like they have bare cupboards. I mean, they've got a lot of talent coming into this program. Just filtering back through. They graduated obviously a really good offensive line and defensive front, but they're going to be more than able, I think, to be a contender to get to that championship game again, and ultimately, yeah, they could realistically win the championship game this year, I think. But you've got teams like Meridian that's out there, Highlands out there, Rigby, the historical powerhouses around the state that it's 6A is going to look a little different this year, losing Lewiston out of league play, but you're still playing the Bengals, but it doesn't mean much for seeding. But it's, I think it's Coeur d'Alene's to lose in the North as far as District 1 this year. But, and I think Lake City is going to get better. I really do think that the T-Wolves will be a better team. That's another topic for another podcast. But you look at what Coeur d'Alene has returning with the talent that they've got on that roster. They had a lot of junior talent last year that'll be seniors this year as well. So, defensively, I think that they're going to be really, really good. I look at them, they're going to be physical, but think about their defense. They're going to be fast out there on the defensive side of the ball. They hung their hat on defense last year, and I see a repeat of that, but I think they're going to be a little bit more explosive, I think, on the offensive end. They figured out a lot of things with Caden Simmons at quarterback last year that's going to translate into freeing up some more options on the offensive side of the ball this year.
Yeah, and that's where I wrote the Coeur d'Alene High preview for IdahoSports.com, which, friendly reminder, we are writing once again a season preview for every single high school football team in the state of Idaho. We've got probably like 70% of the previews up on the site right now. We're writing and adding more and more every day. So if your favorite team isn't on there yet, just keep checking back. But Coeur d'Alene's is in there. I wrote it. And yeah, it's interesting where last year all these great defensive players returned and they kind of hung their hat on that defense while the offense kind of learned and developed as the season went along. This year, it's kind of the opposite. You look at what the defense lost. Shea Robertson, heart and soul of that defense at Eastern Washington now. Camden DeGraw, impact defensive end who's now at Washington State. They lost Aaron Ivankovich, another big dude up front on the line. They do return some guys in the secondary, right? Jason Cady is back. Colby Cooey, some guys like that. But really, it's the offense that brings back a lot of talent from last year, especially in the passing game. You mentioned Caden Simmons, who started after the first couple of games last year, started basically his sophomore season. But then look at the wide receivers that are back. Kai Wheeler, who's a vertical threat and a matchup nightmare. He big, tall dude out there. Colby Cooey is back. He can play that slot back position. They like to get him involved at the goal line a lot with running the ball out of the slot. They also bring back Jason Cady, who played in the slot on offense. And so I look at the passing game for Coeur d'Alene, and I think that is what they might be able to lean on a little bit in the early going. They did lose their top two running backs, but I think overall Coeur d'Alene's going to be right in the mix. To me, it's Coeur d'Alene, Rigby, Rocky Mountain. Those are kind of like the big three if I'm tiering teams. And then maybe a step below that is like your Eagle, Meridian, those kinds of teams. But to me, the big three going into the season are Coeur d'Alene, Rigby, Rocky Mountain. Wouldn't you know it? Coeur d'Alene is hosting Rigby next Friday night. I guess we'll find out a lot after that season opener.
Yeah, I mean, stay tuned. We'll find out a whole lot within the next week or so. But and like, how cool to be to get a rematch of that semifinal or the quarterfinal game, Coeur d'Alene and Rocky from last year. Coeur d'Alene, in my mind, I mean, I'd called that game. Coeur d'Alene manhandled Rocky Mountain in that football game, and Rocky returns a lot of that team, though. That's going to be a really, really deep lineup. They've got a whole lot of talent, especially in the secondary with that group. So if you're talking about teams defensively that match up well against Coeur d'Alene, that's going to be a fit. But Coeur d'Alene was able to run really well against Rocky Mountain last year, so that's a different story. But yeah, I mean, it's 6A. I think you've got your favorites, like we said, the Rigbys, the Coeur d'Alenes, the Rockies. I still throw Meridian personally up there at the top just because of offensive talent that they've got coming back. And then you got dudes like Mountain View too, who's going to have some talent. Why he's going to be better. So there's going to be some teams to keep an eye on at 6A with a little bit different landscape with how things shake up and how things get slotted for the playoffs. It's going to be real interesting, especially in the IEL with Post Falls and Lake City. Post Falls returns some guys too, and Lake City is going to have better quarterback play this year as well. So the T-Wolves can make things interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be really fascinating to see how that shakes out in that new 3-team Inland Empire League, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and Lake City, which takes us to burning question number 2. How does Lewiston dropping down affect the 5A race, where Lewiston is no longer a 6A school? This is not a we want to petition down. It is you fell into the enrollment parameters, and so now you get to move down a classification level. I'll tell you though, Sandpoint is the reigning league champion, and they have been for the past several years. Lakeland was a playoff team last year, a team that's really developing under head coach Mike Schroeder, and made a great hire in the offseason, I thought, bringing former head coach Tim Kiefer back on staff as the defensive coordinator. And so now it's a 3-team league again. Moscow has dropped down. We'll get to them in a second. But it's Sandpoint, Lakeland, and Lewiston. And I think a lot of people are just assuming, Lewiston, they're going to come down and manhandle everybody. I'm not sure that's the case.
No, I mean, I really look at that. It's that of all the leagues at 5A, I mean, you talk about a pretty balanced conference where you got Lewiston coming in. They've got talent, but there's going to be a little bit of a drop with some of the talent that left last year. So, I mean, I don't think it's a cakewalk if the Bengals walk in the front door and own the league day one. I don't think that's necessarily the case at all. Sandpoint returns a lot of talent off of last year's team. Lakeland is going to be improved. They were a playoff team last year, like you mentioned. I look at Lakeland, they're going to be probably one of the more improved teams in North Idaho. Just with, they had so many guys out last year with injuries. They got absolutely decimated at times. So a lot of the youngsters got playing time, but they've got some key players coming back in that lineup. I mean, Lakeland's a team to watch out. They're going to be dangerous this year, especially with the ball control type offense that Lakeland runs. They're going to get fits. I don't think it's Lewiston's league, by any stretch. I think Sandpoint still owns the conference right now if you're looking at it on paper. But I really, realistically, you could see a 3-way tie in this conference.
And I think Lewiston, the nice thing for them is it's somewhat of a soft landing spot because they are moving down to the 5A classification where 16 teams out of approximately 25 get to go to the postseason. So that's kind of like that's a minimum goal. Qualify
there's a lot
for
of
the
that larges available, which means there's a lot of opportunity for wins in the first round. I mean, you can beat up on each other. You could walk in the first round and you can get a second place team out of East Idaho or a third place team and sneak a win. And that's, kind of where we're sitting at looking at this conference. I look at it to be a 3-bid team. I really do, or 3-bid league. I think that the IEL 5A could realistically get all 3 teams into the playoffs this year. And
Lewiston, I think, knows that they have the potential to be a playoff team and want to try and achieve a higher seed in the Max Preps rankings. Coach Matt Pancari said basically, this is the toughest schedule I've had in the 7-8 seasons I've been here at Lewiston. They are playing all of their former 6A league foes, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and Lake City. They're going to play Sandpoint and Lakeland. Those are no slouches. And then they're also playing a couple of really tough Washington teams. They are playing Kennewick, and last year the Kennewick Lions went 10-2, made a deep playoff run. They're playing Clarkston as well, and last year the Bantams went 8-3. So
they were a playoff team last year too. So.
Yes, 7 of the 9 teams that are on Lewiston's schedule made their postseason last year.
Yeah, Lewiston's got a tough schedule. That's why, I mean, you look at it, the battle of attrition. How are they going to do with injuries and everything else coming out of that type of schedule? But, if they pick up some wins too, though, that's going to help them in rankings. I mean, you look at what's going to happen. And we talked about that in our media meeting with the IHSAAs. Like, it's kind of like classifications be darned. If your opponent's getting a bunch of wins, it's going to bode well for you in your Max Preps rankings. So, playing a schedule like that, you're going to see some wins from your opponents that it's going to, I think, Lewiston rankings wise, we knocked them last year with the schedule that they had. They went the opposite direction this year and scheduled way up. And I think it's going to help them as far as, even if they walk in with a 500 record, I still see them as a playoff team.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they navigate this water. There's lots of opportunities in that Lewiston backfield. Drew Hottinger, who's been their starting quarterback the past 2 seasons, is gone. It sounds like it's going to be maybe senior Jeremy Yoder or junior Mason Way competing for that job. And same thing with Jackson Lathan, a 2-year starter at running back. He's now gone. Senior Noah Carpenter and junior Austin Top are kind of the early favorites there. So that's Lewiston. Burning question number 3, kind of a similar situation with Moscow dropping down a level to the 4A classification, Ryan. This, unlike Lewiston, which fell into the enrollment parameters to move down, this was a move where Moscow football has struggled the past couple of years, just getting like bodies out for the team. And this was a petition down for the sake of competitiveness and trying to restore their program. I get the sense that Moscow views this as a short-term window, and they hope to be back to, because it wasn't that long ago that they were a really good team, and they just had an alum get drafted into the NFL, Jonah Ellis, right, who went to play linebacker at Utah, and now he's in the league. But at the same time, I kind of understand Bonners Ferry and Timberlake not being real thrilled about this arrangement with Moscow either. But how do you see this all shaking out? Because I think it's the same thing. I think Moscow, everyone assumes they're dropping down. They've got Noah Velasco coming back, this dynamic quarterback from a year ago, and they're going to rip roar to the league title. I'm not sure that's the case.
No, I think the conference is going to be, Moscow's going to have their hands full still. I don't think anything's easy and guaranteed. They're playing, some 3A teams as well on their schedule, starting out with Kellogg on the schedule. But I think they're going to have a better season than they did last year by far. I think with another year under their belt with Noah Velasco, and I think that they've got some pretty good talent at receiver too, that he's got some targets to throw to. There's some speed on that team, but they've got some guys that have been able to come back. I know that they didn't have Wyatt Hardig last year on the offensive and defensive front. He was the freshman of the year or newcomer of the year the prior year in the IEL 4A, the old 4A. He wasn't able to play last year due to concussion protocol. He's back for his senior season. I say this also because I'm related to him, but he's going to have a good year. He's a great athlete. He's a big kid. They're going to play him in the middle on defense and play him at guard, and I think that he's going to anchor that offensive line that's going to give Noah more time to throw. But I think Moscow, realistically, they're going to give teams fits. I see them being the second team in the conference. I think Timberlake's got the edge right now in the driver's seat to repeat as league champs, but Moscow could definitely make a play to win that league. Just with the talent, you look at it on paper with what they've got back. It's, I think, 50-50 on them and Timberlake at the top.
Now, Timberlake did lose quite a bit. Gotta love Coach Kelly Amos. When I reached out to him for the season preview, he totaled it up. He crunched the numbers. He said, we return 233 yards of offense from a team that had over 4,300 yards a season ago. That's what they bring back.
They've got their work cut out for him, but I know that he's done such a great job bringing up that program, from the bottom up. And it's kind of, sometimes at times it looks like it's plug and play with that wing T offense that they run. And, he ho-hums about that, but he had a pretty deep team too last year. So I don't think he's going to poo-poo too much on his guys, but he did lose some really good talent. There was a lot of talent there on that Timberlake team. I think, I look at it's like Moscow could pull like what Wood River did a few years ago when they came down from 4A to 3A, when they came up and played Bonners Ferry that year. The Bonners Ferry was undefeated and made a nice playoff run, but it could be interesting to see will it pay dividends year one for Moscow and maybe a 1 or a 2 year stint with that approved hardship that they've got to go down a classification. I think Moscow could realistically be a playoff team. They could. Yeah, for sure.
That'll be interesting. So that is our third burning question there. And yeah, kind of like the 5A classification, the 4A playoff field, a little bloated right now. We had several sub 500 teams make the playoffs last year. So I think that's an easy first goal for Moscow. And then, we'll see if they can win the Intermountain League title after that. Our last two questions are going to be about 8-man football, Ryan. Burning question number 4. With Ryan Hasselstrom returning as the head coach at Prairie, what are our expectations for the Pirates? Coach Hasselstrom, very decorated career coaching Prairie, coached him to a couple of state championships. His son, Brody Hasselstrom, of course, was a fantastic running back. And then that's when Ryan kind of stepped away. He still has coached track in the spring, but he said basically, I kind of want to watch Brody play college football. I'm ready to just step away. Turns out the step away was for 2 seasons, and now he's back. I'll tell you, there is renewed excitement down there in Cottonwood. But at the same time, you still have to have the players. I think they've got, and let's be clear about this too. T.T. Kane, who had coached Prairie the past 2 seasons, he did a great job too.
Yeah.
Prairie just happened to be the first team out of the the postseason each of the past 2 years probably should have been in over a couple of teams that got in based on automatic bids. So this was a Prairie program that hasn't fallen off that far, but they're also on a 2-year playoff drought.
I think that they're back. I mean, back in the playoffs. I mean, the problem with Prairie is that you have this team kind of 25 miles as the crow flies, kind of due north of Cottonwood, that came up a classification from, now 1A, but up to 2A, but that's in Kendrick. That I look at Kendrick as the league favorite. You've got a really good Logos team. You've got Potlatch that's been really consistently good. You've got Kamei. I mean, that league is brutal. So, in any other conference, is Prairie a league champ? I think so. I mean, like, as far as they're a contender for a league championship, I just think that this White Pine League is so ridiculously deep that they could be the third place team. They could be the second place team. They could be the fourth or fifth place team. It's just kind of a matter of how it's going to go. But like, there's just a ton of talent in that White Pine this year. It is super deep.
Yeah. Based on, we kind of take a preseason poll. We asked the coaches to kind of predict how the conference will play out. Kendrick got some first place votes. Logos got some first place votes. I'm not going to give away the poll. You'll have to tune in next week when we release all of our preseason coaches polls for every conference in the state of Idaho. But yes, Kendrick, I think, is going to slot in just fine. And for Prairie, they bring back Dylan Uhlencott, who was a great running back a season ago. I think it's going to be back to the old classic, the ground and pound that we're used to seeing from Prairie.
Yeah, and that's Coach Hasselstrom's forte. I mean, he's known for just absolutely physical offenses and mauling defenses, and I think you're going to see a return to that for that Pirate team. But like I said, the conference is just so tough. I mean, they could surprise people and make a run and maybe hit a speed bump or two and get a real nice, comfortable entrance into the playoffs, or they could be scratching and clawing and be odd man out. I mean, it's kind of 50-50 on that one. I think they're going to be better. Don't get me wrong, but I think the conference as a whole got better too.
And this will be music to everyone in the White Pine League's ears. It's never too early to start looking at the brackets, right? Here we are, the freaking third day of 2-a-days, and I'm already looking at the state brackets. But the 2A bracket this year, they will take the 4 conference champions, and they will all receive a first round bye. And then the next 8 highest ranked teams, according to Max Preps, will have play-in games. That's no huge. More multiple guaranteed bids from leagues that aren't as strong as others. And so I guess that might have been a good burning question too. How many White Pine teams could we see get in?
I mean, realistically, you're looking at Kendrick, Logos, Prairie, Potlatch if they're back again. I mean, yeah, Potlatch is realistically there. Kamei, I wouldn't count out either. So, like, I mean, you're looking at 5. Like, that's realistically, like, Clearwater Valley's out there too. It's, I mean, the conference is deep. I'm telling you, like, that is no cakewalk.
And like, somebody's got to take last place in this league.
Yeah.
But Troy is phenomenal, right? They've got Makai Durrett back. Lapway started a freshman at quarterback last year. That's a pretty good athlete, Jerice McCormick. Clearwater Valley, Kamei brings back David Clute. I mean, the sky is the limit for the White Pine League, and with so many playoff bids available, it's going to be fascinating to track the Max Preps rankings all season long. That's for sure. So, all right, our last burning question, you kind of alluded to it. Kendrick has moved on up. They've moved up from 1A to 2A. Genesee has dropped down the other way from 2A to 1A. So the question is, with the 800-pound gorilla named Kendrick now gone from the 1A White Pine League, who actually wins this thing? Is it going to be Deary, Genesee, Lewis County, or Timberline? Your mic is on mute, Ryan. Uh-oh, can't hear you. We lost your audio. I'll tell you my opinion. Sneakily, I kind of Timberline is a team that I've really got on my radar. They bring back Corbin Christopherson, the freshman QB who started last year. Lewis County, you can never count out a Monty Madrell coach team. Really, the question to me is, Genesee, when they drop down, how competitive will they be? They're a program that had fallen on hard times. And Deary just has athletes up the wazoo. But if you're asking me today to pick a team, I might regret saying this later. I'm going Timberline. Call me crazy.
I don't know. Can you still hear me yet or no?
Yes,
Okay,
I got you now.
I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna say Lewis County. I don't know. I just don't want to count them out with now finally having a little bit of freedom with Kendrick out of the picture. But also Deary's been right in there too. I look at those two teams as kind of leading that charge. I know that you're going to go off the board with Timberline. Thing is, I'm not going to count out Genesee. I'm not, because you got kids from Colton coming over too that play with them as well. Coach Pedrovsky's got college experience at University of Idaho. He's a good coach there with the Bulldogs. I don't count out Genesee at all to be right in the mix there in that new look 1A White Pine League.
And I make none of these picks I make with confidence. All four teams. I mean, Deary lost a couple of heartbreaking games in overtime last year, real close one possession games. It really, outside of Kendrick, the other three teams have been very competitive with each other over the past couple of seasons. So it's going to be really fun to track and to monitor. That's for sure. But yeah.
No, I think we're in for an awesome season. I think it's going to be a ton of fun to see how things shake out.
Yep. So those are some of the big storylines, and hopefully we answered some of those burning questions. I might have left with more questions than answers, so I don't know.
But that usually is how it goes, because I think we don't know how it goes until we get through like week 8. So and now we're calling, there is no more 0 week officially in the state of Idaho. It's now week 1 is next week. So
yep. Yeah. Week 1. That's the official verbiage. Week 1 next week. Just off the top of my head, Rigby's going to play Coeur d'Alene. That's obviously kind of the big game we'll spotlight. But everybody, I mean, there's going to be some really juicy matchups to talk about on next week's show. Plus, we will kind of tell you just headlines for volleyball, soccer, cross country, golf as well. So
a lot of coaching movement out there, especially in volleyball, like short towards the front of the season. There's going to be some headlines definitely kind of jumping out there if you look at the 6A.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can talk about that real quick just to wrap up the show. The Coeur d'Alene Press had a good write-up about this, where Willow Hanna and her husband Tony Hanna, who were both coaches up here in North Idaho. Willow was the volleyball coach at Post Falls. Tony was the boys basketball coach at Lakeland. They moved to Florida, and it was a decision that happened very late in the summer. And so it kind of left Post Falls scrambling a little bit to find a coach. They did get that coaching void filled.
They got a nice landing spot where they brought back their former coach that had a ton of success. So they'll be okay.
Yeah. But yes, those are the kinds of things that happen sometimes on the eve of the season. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got just old reliable at Coeur d'Alene. I tracked all of the coaches this year in Idaho for football, and who has been at their current school the longest. It's not even close. It's Sean Amos at Coeur d'Alene, entering his 28th season with the Vikings. It's just incredible.
Yeah. Well, he started coaching there when I was in high school, so I don't want to make him feel old or anything, but
it's gonna make you feel old.
Last year, so he's been there a minute.
Yeah, it's gonna make you feel old. That's for sure. So yeah, here we are, off and running. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to the North Idaho Prepcast. We will be back next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, as we break it down and start talking about actual matchups on the field of competition. But until then, for Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning into the North Idaho Prepcast on Idaho Sports.